Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Artlist webinar series. Again, my name is Rich Roberts, Solutions Architect here at Artlist. I want to thank you for joining us. Here today, we're going to be talking with Gabe Corsini and Josh Jacobs. We're going to be going over achieving CMMC success with Tesseract, the tailored cybersecurity for vets by vets. What better two folks to run this here, or individuals that have served for us and are continuing to serve for us, and are able to serve you today with going over how you're going to get that tailored cybersecurity to meet the requirements for CMMC. Without further ado, let Gabe and Josh jump in and give you the direction you need.
Thanks, Rich. My name is Josh Jacobs. I'm Senior Vice President here at Artlist. I spent 23 years active duty Navy, which is where I met my colleague Gabe. We ended up at Networcom together at the end of my career, and obviously at the end of his as well. We had the honor and privilege of being some of the founding members of Operation Flank Speed, where we had the opportunity to build the Navy's cloud enterprise network in the Microsoft 365 and Azure platform, and begin the Navy's digital transformation journey into cloud. Shortly after accreditation, I decided to retire and joined Artlist as in the managed services, Tesseract managed services role, and had an opportunity to bring Gabe along with me. Gabe?
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks, everybody, for joining. My name is Gabe Corsini. I was an information systems technician in the Navy for 10 years, where I met Josh towards the end of my career. Like we said, doing that cloud enterprise network and building Operation Flank Speed from the ground up, migrating a lot of users and bringing them kind of into the modern era of cloud computing. Decided to end my career there and join Josh here at Artlist and continue that work by building out Tesseract and bringing that managed service and compliance to small and mid-sized businesses who want to do work with the DoD.
Great, thank you guys. There's one thing I didn't include there. I want to make a note to everybody. Feel free to submit your questions during this webinar at any time. They will be addressed maybe at the end of the section during the Q&A if we don't have time in the middle. But if there is time, we will address it at that point in time. So please make note that if you have a question, enter it into the session, and we'll take care of it as soon as we get an opportunity to do so.
Awesome. Thanks, Rich. All right. So we'll kind of kick this off with talking a little bit about why you need a cybersecurity program. Before I quick slides there. The way we used to kind of do business working with the DoD is we had this old way we called attestation. Businesses would sign contracts, they would win work with the government, and they would have to usually attest to some sort of cybersecurity standard, the most popular of which being the NIST 800-171. That said, the only way to really know if a company was attesting to NIST 800-171 was they would go and report themselves. They'd upload their SPRS score and say, I meet all of the requirements. The problem with this method is that it has a lot of negative side effects. First off, most of those side effects were punitive. The insurance claims would go unpaid. There'd be legal settlements when there's poor cybersecurity posture or when breaches would occur. But it also has a negative impact on us as a country. It would encourage businesses to kind of hide their true compliance standard or meeting those NIST 800-171 standards. And it doesn't take into account that adversaries are good at what they do, and cybersecurity is not 100% effective. Breaches can and will happen. I think Josh and I were just talking the other day. If you look at some examples in the real world from the Georgia Institute of Technology or the University of Pennsylvania, who are now facing some punitive action from the Department of Justice for False Claims Act for failing to meet those NIST 800-171 standards. So this old way of attestation isn't really a good or effective method anymore. So what do we do instead? And I think that's kind of where we start to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Josh.
No, go ahead, Gabe.
It's kind of where we start to talk about this, okay, a better way of doing things is assurance and reliance. Now we want to start verifying that folks are meeting cybersecurity standards, not just because they say they are, but because they're being assessed for that standard as well. And you want to make sure that we're implementing those right security measures to minimize those risks, but also minimize the damage in the event of a breach. You'll see this in a lot of other cybersecurity standards. For example, the ISO 27001 has always had a third-party assessment requirement, and there's other requirements like that out there in other cybersecurity frameworks. So the CMMC is an assessment of the requirements to meet the DFARS 252, 204, 7012, which mandates implementing NIST 800 171 and reporting on these different security incidences. This kind of creates this assured way that the government knows that when we're working with the business, we're aligning ourselves truly with those requirements so we can protect government data and do that business in a secure fashion while also mitigating risks in the event of a breach or some other sort of incident. The bottom line here is that getting compliant ends up becoming a competitive advantage. And that's what a cybersecurity program is. It's a competitive advantage. It's not just the government that values this from their vendors, but other businesses that want to buy from vendors or work with vendors as a partner can be assured that the posture of the vendor that they're working with has met some sort of compliance standard, and that we're reducing legitimate risk to businesses when things aren't properly handled and your efforts are recognized either with an ISO certification or in this case, a CMMC certification. Also, we're starting to see insurance companies that are looking for these assurances before providing risk transfer or willing to accept some of your risk, which I think is really important, especially if we're talking about doing work with the business and this is national or work with the DoD, excuse me, and this is national security work. That level of assurance goes a long way in helping the DoD understand you can protect that sensitive information.
And what that really means, can you go back one slide?
Sure.
What that really means is like you should have a plan at a bare minimum for building out a cybersecurity program. Have a plan. And in order to have a plan, right, you need to understand what your business is and does and what potential risks to business there are, and start to frame a cybersecurity program around your business and the risks to it. But short, plain and simple, have a plan. And we can talk more about that as we go through the rest of our presentation.
Absolutely. That kind of takes us to the CMMC 2.0 rollout. At this point, CMMC is a big topic of discussion, and as we all know, the final rule has come out, and we're getting ready to start hitting this rollout implementation. The big important one here is phase one. We're going to start seeing that voluntary assessments can begin on December 16th, but I think the really important caveat here, which you can see in that call-out box, is contract officers can start putting whatever requirements they need to put in their contract starting December 16th. But the most important part here is you need to start being able to at least self-attest yourself at CMMC level 2 and saying you can meet all of those requirements as you start to prepare for an assessment. If there's any other questions about anything related to the timeline, please feel free to put them in chat. We'd love to take those. I'd like to take a minute just to make sure we don't have any currently on the books, if that's okay, Rich.
You're on mute, my friend.
About
At least once a day.
Yeah,
there you go, Rich.
Once a day to keep the doctor away. So, question on the board is, if my contract comes up for renewal in the first year after the phase one has started, do I still have to self-attest?
Yes, I think the short answer there is yes. In that phase one rollout, you still have to be able to self-attest at the CMMC level that's required for your contract, whether that's level 1 or level 2. I think it would be the short answer there. And Rich, if there's anything you want to add to that as well.
No, that yeah, you're absolutely correct. So the self-attest would follow through for that full calendar year after it begins, when Title 48 is in effective 1 year after that. That's the self-attest period. So if it falls within that period, you would have to self-attest even in a renewal of contract. And it really goes down to what your contract says. So we can't, say what's in your contract, but if your contract has a requirement for CMMC certification, you will be self-attesting during that time period.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, thank you for the question. I really appreciate that. without any other questions, we'll kind of start moving forward and let's kind of start talking about exploring your options. So the whole premise here is you need to have some sort of plan, especially when we're talking about attesting to CMMC and getting prepared for an assessment. You have to have some sort of plan to prepare for that. And there's a couple ways we can frame this. Starting from an internal option, the option number one is currently you could do nothing. Maybe your contracts aren't at risk of renewal for right now. Maybe you don't see a CMMC requirement coming down the pipe either from the DoD or from your prime contractor at this current time. The pros for doing nothing at the moment would be short-term cost savings, and you're trading time now to work on the things you need to do now for doing a compliance program at a later date. But the cons of this could be loss of business opportunities, increased security risks, or regulatory and legal consequence, and maybe even a competitive disadvantage if you're trying to attain new work. Another option is to build a team internally to handle this compliance program for you, which gives you a lot of great control and oversight and helps make sure that you have the in-house expertise for future projects or even protection over your own sensitive data. But it also means that there's a high initial and ongoing cost, and it's pretty time consuming to handle on your own, as well as it's difficult to find people who are experts in this particular cybersecurity and compliance framework. That kind of kicks us over to external. Josh, can you talk about some of these external options?
Yeah. So again, back to having a plan. One of the things that some of the traditional consulting services do well is identify gaps in remediation and build out remediation plans, right? And it's a traditional time and materials engagement, set amount of time to do a deep dive in your environment. Find out what is in place and what needs to be put in place, what needs to be fixed. Pros to that are an objective assessment of your cybersecurity posture, right? You have an outside eye looking in with no preconceived ideas. They'll build a customized remediation plan, so you know exactly what you need to do, or at least you know exactly what controls you need to meet. And knowledge transfer. Some of the cons to that would be it's expensive. And the quality of those plans and analyses vary among providers, right? Can you guarantee that they are experts in what they're looking at, or are they just reading off of a checklist and identifying some things? And your internal team may not have the expertise or experience to meet or implement those identified gaps and required remediations. Another con to that is that in addition to it being expensive, it's largely pointing to what we have found as something that a managed service program may just provide from the very beginning, right? A managed service provider has a lot of pros as well as cons, like expertise and experience, right? So being experts in the specific regulatory compliance framework and the technology that they're implementing. It's typically a faster implementation with reduced burden on the staff. So they're going to have a greater lift, and depending on the type of service or service tiers that you're paying for, your service provider will do increased amounts of, or have increased amounts of responsibilities around the different implementations. And it's a more stable cost forecasting platform, because you know what you're going to be paying for year after year based on signed contracts. Some of the cons to that are organizations will depend heavier on their service provider, right? So having to reach out to get things done versus just doing it yourself. Quality variability among providers. Again, can you feel comfortable with the provider, and have you spent enough time in the interview process to truly be comfortable with the organization that you're going to hire to do your managed service? And risk of misalignment between provider approach and your goals. I think can we pause for any additional questions, Rich? Is there anything in the queue specific to that? You're muted again, my friend.
Twice is too many times. So there is a question. If we go back a little bit, there's a
Sure.
question that says it states the contracting officer can do whatever he wants. Can you expand on that a little bit on the timeline? The
Yeah,
contracting officer.
I'll pop back for a second. I think what that really boils down to is that the contracting officer for a specific segment of the DoD, depending on who's providing the contract, has the leeway to say anybody who's bidding for this contract either at a minimum must hit that self attestment at this point, which is what phase one is all about, or might even say we're only going to work with vendors who have already done a voluntary assessment or will be scheduled for an assessment within a certain period of time. Contracting officers are able to kind of put into that language, this is what we're requiring. And even if you haven't got a C3PAO assessment, or maybe you're not quite scheduled for one, their contract language could be more strict and require someone who's already been assessed, someone who's going to be assessed soon or has something scheduled. It just gives them that ability to make stricter requirements, which is why I think this is really important to start working on now and have a plan now for how you want to approach this, not just for your existing contracts, but for contracts that you might be planning to bid for in the future. This is the competitive advantage part. For anybody who's gotten assessment or is planning for assessment or is maybe even scheduled for one, and is working towards that, that's going to be an advantage over other vendors who aren't as prepared as your organization might be. And hopefully that answers the question. I think that's kind of it in short terms there.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. Anything else you wanted to hit on here, Josh?
No, so we talked specifically, hey, you need a plan, right? And here's some four potential paths to having a plan. If you could hit the next slide, Gabe.
Sure thing.
So the last thing we touched on was a managed service, and here I'd like to talk a little bit more Artilus specific, right? So in order to have a plan, we want to help you understand business risk, right? We want to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities, not just from a cyber perspective, but threats and vulnerabilities to the business by not having a cybersecurity program. We want to understand risks based on impact and likelihood, and develop risk mitigation strategies. The next step is technology implementation. So what is the tech stack that we're going to do? How are we going to integrate? How are we going to monitor your tools and services? And how are we going to ensure that we're providing comprehensive training, right? If CUI is the premise or the founding principle of having this specific framework, you need to have training specific to those requirements. System administration, implementing strong access controls, updating and patching systems, monitoring system performance and security, really, which is about log aggregation and prepping for the cyber defense or the monitor and manage side of things, which comes into the cybersecurity program governance, where we want to develop and enforce cybersecurity policies and procedures, assign roles and responsibilities, conduct regular audits and reviews, and implement continuous monitoring. And for you vets out there, I'm sure you are very well familiar with the continuous monitoring requirements. All of those things will help us identify and build a plan and design ongoing services around that plan.
I think that's kind of what takes us into this idea of, what's really important, on top of having a plan is something where you can get a comprehensive approach to solving this problem. And this is kind of where Tesseract meets at its core. It's this comprehensive approach to having compliance tools, business strategies, and operational efficiency all kind of overlapping into one place so that you as a business can make sure that you're meeting these CMMC requirements, not only in the most efficient way possible, but the most cost-effective way possible, and using the right tools to get there. Where we see some of these overlaps is in, like, compliance tools and business strategies. We're using compliance as a competitive advantage again to make sure that we can compete in this, defense industrial base to win contract work with the DoD. We're mitigating risk through advanced security measures. We're ensuring compliance is a business enabler and not a hindrance. And I think that's a big key part here to a lot of CMMC for small businesses. This is oftentimes viewed as, well, this is something that's getting in the way of me doing work. We want to turn this into a thing that's going to help you get more work and better your business, not make it harder for you to do business. We also see compliance tools and operational efficiency tend to overlap, where we need expert configuration and program management, real-time threat detection and response, which is really important in today's cybersecurity landscape, but also simplified management of security policies, tailored security policies to your business. And then our business strategies and our operational efficiency have to go together as well. We need to still be able to innovate through efficient operations. You're a business that's going to evolve and change. A cybersecurity program shouldn't stagnate your business in the way that it grows. You need to be able to have something that's not just going to break the bank. So cost savings for a program that fits exactly what you need, no more or no less, is the way forward, while also improving that staff productivity and giving you the ability to outsource expertise to the people who can help you do that work without taking on any unnecessary burden. And that's kind of where we start talking about Tesseract. Tesseract.
Well, can you pop back to that last slide?
Yeah.
It's something I wanted to add here. So I had an opportunity recently to talk to some colleagues or some friends of mine, and they all represent the different circles there. Oddly enough, while Gabe was talking through that, it absolutely just struck me as I had this conversation unintentionally about a week or two ago. I have a friend who has been operating in and running SOCs for a long time. I also have a really good friend who's a policy expert, and then some executive leadership for the DoD. And everybody had the same end goal in mind. They all wanted to get to the same desired end state with cybersecurity programs, but everybody looked at it from a different lens. And as you were going through this, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, the business people really want to know, hey, what is the overall business outcome by implementing this? The operational efficiency really comes down to, hey, how do I know everything is good and people are doing the things they're supposed to? And the compliance
is a bunch of money.
Well, right. And the compliance people are like, hey, are you following these policies? Are these policies right? And they all tie together. And they all tie together to reach the same end state.
Right. And again, I think that's what kind of gets us to like this whole comprehensive approach, which is where Tesseract kind of thrives in what we call cybersecurity program as a service. And Tesseract programs are kind of built in three core phases here. The first part being designing your program. We have some patent pending technology that we'll talk about a little bit, which helps us simplify the requirements around NIST 800-171 to specifically tailor a program to your business. That's easy to assemble, that feels very custom, but in the terms of a friend of ours, very customary for us to build and put together. Then there's the execution of that program. So leveraging our expert cybersecurity and tactical services to put a program in place for you and for your business that sets you up for success and doesn't hinder your business in the way that it operates. And then the management of that program over time, managing the compliance and security operations, making sure that there's ongoing compliance checks that are happening to make sure you're still meeting those different compliance requirements for CMMC. And getting help from our dedicated team of customer success professionals every step of the way to make sure that we're meeting all those requirements, right? And this is where we start kind of talking a little bit about, go ahead, Rich.
Sorry, interrupt you there. There's a question that came up.
Sure.
And this question is, how long does it take typically to implement the Tesseract for CMMC compliance from start to finish?
I think that's a great
I think that depends, right? It depends on a few different factors. Size and size of the organization we're building the program for. And size really is user count and complexity of the environment. The other major factor really boils down to how fast does the customer want to move, and how fast can the customer support moving. For some smaller businesses, we have a few customers that range in the 1 to 10 user web only, cloud only solutions. The typical implementation is 30 days. We've done it faster, but that was because the customers were ready to move as fast as possible, and it was all hands on deck to get all of the policy baselines and monitoring services in place. But a typical implementation looks like 30 to 45 days. For some of the larger, anywhere from 100 to 250 user programs, we typically see 3 to 6 months. But again, depending on how fast organizations want to move and how fast they can support moving, dictates that timeline. Some of the other mitigating factors there, or variables, I should say, are are you going to be implementing a hybrid environment where you have your cloud enclave managing your on-premise resources? Is your on-premise solution going to be your identity management solution for the cloud, or vice versa? Do you have a large data migration? Do you have an infrastructure migration that needs to be either migrated or rebuilt, lift and shift, or completely reconstruct your virtual environment inside of a cloud environment? So all of that to say, 30 to 45 days for smaller, smaller programs that have people that are willing to just stop all business and move forward, or a typical large implementation looks like 3 to 6 months. But again, we can adjust timeline based on how fast the customer can move.
I think that kind of goes back to, if I could just slide back here, this, three-piece problem, this business strategy, operational efficiency, and then compliance requirement. It's where is your business in kind of this journey, and how do these three things overlap for you to help dictate how do we need to move this program forward to get you to where you need to be. And I think answering some of those questions as we start talking about designing your program will answer a lot of those questions of how quickly do we need to move, what's your timeline, what's at risk, and how much effort can we put into this and partner with you on to get you to that next step and get you ready for an assessment, or at least a self-attest, depending on what your requirements are. Thank you for the question, though. I really appreciate that. Going back a little bit to talk about kind of understanding program elements here, you'll notice some similarities. On the left is the Cybersecurity Framework version 1.1. I understand 2.0 is out, but we took this 1.1 version a while back and we said, well, there's something that's kind of key and missing here from this program. Compliance isn't a project. It's not something you get to 100%, say you're done and you don't ever touch again. Compliance is this ever evolving activity that changes as your business changes or as other aspects change too, which we'll talk a lot about here shortly. But you'll see here, we took the Cybersecurity Framework version 1.1 and modified it to add this evolve step. So as we identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, we know throughout this life cycle, there's changes that have to be made to either mitigate more risk or to implement a new part of the business or to work with a new vendor. You have to evolve your program to meet those new requirements as these different changes you kind of shift the landscape around you. This evolution step is really important, and I think is kind of key in what we call the Artlist continuous maturity platform, in making sure that compliance doesn't stop just because you got there one time. It continues to evolve to make sure that you stay there and you're continuing to meet those requirements over time.
Right, and it is directly related to some of the assessment objectives that we're trying to meet in CMMC 2.0 or level 2. So like identify, those are things that we do at the very beginning, right? Conduct a business risk assessment, scope out your enclave and understand your flow of information specific to CUI. And as we work all the way through that circle and hit evolve, evolve is really the trigger to like, hey, here are some change mechanisms, and at least annually, as required by CMMC, if not more frequently, we're going to identify those same things again, and assess if there's any changes that need to be incorporated in the program and update accordingly and move back through the life cycle.
Yeah. That kind of takes us to this next part. This is where it gets fun for, I know, for Josh and I. We start talking about, how we build these compliance programs. Josh, I'll let you kick it off because I know this is a fun one for us.
Sure. So choosing your blocks, what does that really mean? There are 110 controls. There's 320 assessment objectives. It's a lot, right? But Gabe alluded to some patent pending proprietary technology that we've incorporated, right? So, and it all starts with a well, in addition to the business risk assessment, it really starts with a 25 or so question interview or conversation, right? And we take the answers to those questions and shape scenarios. Scenarios really look like user communities and the locations that those user communities are working, the behaviors that those user communities display, and the types of assets and access those users need in those locations. We get the answers to those questions, and we're pulling blocks out of our large database, so we can customize a program for you, but the program is fairly, as Gabe mentioned, it's fairly customary because we already have the answers, right? And we're building out these programs with all of these predefined blocks based on answers. And I know, Gabe, you have another way of explaining that and kind of diving a little deeper, so I'll kick it back over to you.
Yeah, I think what this really kind of gets down to is, like Josh said, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. There's a lot of assessment objectives that have to be met. But in reality, we can kind of boil this down to a series of questions that help us understand what are the scenarios that your business has to operate in, and then what's your tolerance for risk based throughout these different scenarios. It helps us kind of answer these questions and pull out these blocks, which turn into policy language, policy documentation, baseline configurations that we implement for your business and tailor to your business. But these are all blocks that we've prefabricated and pre-generated in the back end in our database to help build out tons of variety of different programs that we can meet you exactly where you are. And that's the important part in the business enabler that we were talking about earlier, not the business hindrance. This tailored design becomes your custom program where you're at today and doesn't force you to fit a mold that other programs might provide for you. And I think that's what's really important. So based on some of these questions, like what we have on the screen, do you allow removable media? Yes or no? Well, maybe you do, but maybe you do only for a certain user community and only when they're on this system and in this location. It's really important to understand that so that we can provide you the specific policy and specific configurations to meet you with that's at, and then protect the rest of your users in the process. So I think this technology is amazing, and that's kind of what makes it, so cool is we're building something that feels like it's just for you.
Yeah, well said.
Awesome. We'll talk a little bit about some of the managed service that Tesseract provides, and we kind of break it down into 3 core segments, which is this govern, harden, and defend. And then you'll see this continuous maturity platform show up again here. Starting at govern, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's building the compliance documentation, compliance policies around your program. This includes an SSP, a POAM to demonstrate how you're approaching cybersecurity and what you're still working on, and build a lot of the different documentation, policy documentation, cybersecurity program manuals to make sure that from a policy perspective, your program is ready to rock and roll. And then the hardened step here is about taking those different decisions that we just talked about alongside our policy and saying, what baseline configurations do we need to put in place for your users, for your IT assets, for the enclave as a whole throughout its life cycle to make sure that you're getting the kind of security and compliance and meeting the technical implementations of those policies and those other assessment objectives in using our Tesseract security architecture for managing and remediating vulnerabilities and managing change. And then we have this defend service. It's all great to have policy, it's great to have technical implementation, but we still need to make sure that the environment is safe over time. We want to check for consistently for indicators of compromise, for potential new threats, or even for potentially dangerous user behavior that might not even be intentional that could put your compliance at risk. Having this continuous monitoring using managed detection and response, or MDR as we're all familiar, helps you deliver the right response to keep your business safe and protected over time.
Yeah, and to kind of simplify and summarize that, right? Like, you want to know where your sensitive information is coming from, like CUI. Where is it coming from? How does it enter your system? How is it stored? How is it processed, and where is it processed? How you're protecting it at each of those stages, and then ultimately, where is your CUI going, and how do you ensure that it's going to authorize recipients? And the identification of those things feed the hardening or the hardened team's configuration baselines, which are then being monitored by the defense services, right? So knowing all those things about the data and who has access to the data and from where, these are the mechanisms of enforcement or control around all of that data protection. And here's how we're making sure that it's safe. I think that about sums it up. Did I miss something, Gabe?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was perfect. I think it's a perfect segue in talking. We talked a lot about change, and I think it kind of takes us perfectly into this section about the 6 sources of change.
No, absolutely. The 6 sources of change, I think, the 6 sources of change really have at least the 6 sources of change that we've established here are really what helps keep our cybersecurity program through that evolutionary process, right? As we identify things in any of these particular areas, it either will help us change the block selection that you currently have, or it may force us to write new blocks for everybody's program, right? So the first one on the screen is you change, right? So your business decides to acquire another organization, or you're partnering with another organization and you want to use their identity management, or they want you to pull all of their telemetry in and monitor it. Well, that's a business change. Or maybe you just bought a business and merged them, and now you have another market segment that you want to prepare for. So that's going to require that you're doing things differently. So we redo the risk assessment and identify changes that need to be implemented. And hopefully we can just pull a block off the shelf. If not, we will build the new block to support it. We change. So Artist's managed service changes, right? We are trying to constantly improve, employ new tech stack, new ways to secure or harden your environment, new monitoring techniques. So we change. Or the regulations change, right? So and NIST 800-171 and CMMC is a perfect example of that. So we know that the final rule was made on or ruled on 800-171 Rev 2. when Rev 3 gets codified, we'll start looking to build new blocks around Rev 3. But right now it's Rev 2, and that's what the final rule has determined, right? And then we move into vendors, vulnerabilities, and threats. And Gabe, I know you get pretty passionate about the three of these. So I'll kick it on over to you.
Yeah, these are the kinds of change. A lot of this is change that happens external to you, but a lot of things that when other things change, it can have a big impact on your business. So let's talk about vendors for just a second. Microsoft is a growing platform that's maturing on a regular basis, especially when we're talking about government cloud. As these things continue to change at that rapid pace, it might have an impact on how you implement different parts of the technology or make new technology available. As those vendors change, we want to keep our blocks up to date with those changes or create new blocks to implement new technologies. And then these last two I think are really important, and they're very, very common, is new vulnerabilities and new threats. You hear every day that some vendor has discovered a zero-day flaw in some router that they have, switch they have, piece of software that they have. As these new vulnerabilities come into play, we want to make sure that we're adapting programs across the board to protect against these vulnerabilities or mitigate the risk from them if removing the vulnerability isn't an option right now. And then new threats. You hear every day about some new hacking group and some organization across the world who's targeting specific organizations. We want to make sure that we understand what the tactics of these new threats are, how we can mitigate those threats, how we can look for indicators of compromise, and keep our service up to date so that we can protect you in real time as closely as possible, and then modify the program to protect against the kinds of compromise that these threats specialize in. So these 6 sources of change is all about just making sure we have this evolutionary play on a consistent basis. Your program isn't static, your business isn't static, we aren't, and neither is the rest of the industry or those threats and vulnerabilities. It's constantly being aware of what's going on and evolving to meet your business where you are and mitigate as much risk as possible across the board, keeping that ever moving target of compliance always in sight and always on the bullseye. Go ahead, Rich. Make sure you're not off mute, Rich. There you
go. Question on the board. What internal resources or roles will our team need to dedicate to the implementation process?
That's a great question. And I think the answer, and we're going to talk about it a little bit here in a few slides. The answer is it'll depend a little bit. We have a lot of flexibility in how the program gets designed, and a lot of that's based around cost effectiveness and the kinds of support that your business might need. As far as internal resources, usually in a lot of cases, especially for our small businesses, it's as long as we have a point of contact, someone we can communicate with on a regular basis at a periodicity that works for you, so that we can all make sure that we're on the same path to getting you to a compliant place. Whether we're meeting every week, every other week, in some cases, we meet with some customers once a month because that's the time that they can commit to it. It's all about meeting you where you are. So if you only have certain dedicated times to work with us, those are the times we're going to work with you and we're going to make that work. It's that having that flexibility in the service to make sure that you're getting what you need when you need it, but not telling you that you have to mold or comply to some standard that we have then enforced on you. We want to work together. This is a partnership. Go ahead, Josh.
Right. And, specific resources, think about the smaller organizations that may be in startup mode, or maybe they work well as small organizations. Typically, we've seen that they're not staffed out with a deep IT bench, and they need more IT support from us. And other organizations may be steeped in IT resources and don't need as much support from us. So depending on the service level that you decide to buy or is recommended based on all of the scoping conversations, that will kind of determine what level of support you need from us and what internal resources you need to have in order to make things go. But the bottom line is, as long as there's one person there who can make decisions and who can, accept the policies and sign things as they need to be signed. That's really the only requirement. The drawback to that is you need a higher service level in order for us to do all of the things for you.
Right.
Uh,
I think that's something we'll
there's
talk
a
about.
part
Go ahead,
two to
Rich.
that question, which is
Sure.
what if we have an external MSP that we use for our IT services?
Oh, I love that question. Um, I would love personally to partner with your MSP. And so we'll talk about it again as we talk about our service levels. The service levels are designed based on how much support you need. If you have an external MSP who handles all the day-to-day IT operations, you don't need us coming in and doing that same job. You might just need us for building out your compliance program and giving those baseline configurations and doing that monitoring, and then partnering with your external MSP who does that day-to-day IT. We're happy to collaborate, and we have multiple customers that we operate in that exact same fashion. If you have an external MSP who does your IT stuff, great. I would love to partner with you and talk to them as well. That's absolutely something we can adopt for. That's not a problem whatsoever. Thanks for that question. Man, I love that question. Sorry, passionate. That kind of takes us over here into Tesseract capabilities. This is a pretty extensive list, so I'll just kind of hit it at a high level. We provide a ton of different capabilities that are built into our program and our various service levels. There's a lot of technical information here, but at a high level, we have tons of ways to do data protection, device protection, network security. We can do a lot of setup and maintenance, and then also operation and evolution. It's all about making sure that we have tons of capability to meet your business where you are and have the right capabilities for the things that you either need to improve on or for gaps that you need to solve for. We're here to help make that work. We work with a lot of different tools and a lot of different vendors to make sure that you're getting what you need. If there's specific questions on this slide, please feel free to jump in. I won't get too technical for this one. That kind of takes us over to staying compliant with outcomes. I'll kick it over to Josh for that one.
Yeah, so staying compliant with Tesseract outcomes. So we've had a question appear routinely over the last couple of years. Well, why can't somebody just get me compliant and then I'm good? I can get you compliant, and the minute I walk away and you don't do all of the things that the program determines or outlines that you need to do, you're no longer compliant. So, within the first 24 hours after you hit compliance, if all you wanted was an implementation, like a traditional consulting engagement, if you don't pick up the mantle and do all of the things yourself, then you're no longer compliant. In order to do that, again, like I feel like maybe we're repetitive for a reason, because I think it's important to understand that, look at govern, right? Understand your risk and direct your program. That's the first line item. Control and protect your sensitive information, which is the reason this framework exists. Control, access, and monitor your facilities. Now, I will say that monitoring facilities and physical security controls are typically something that our customers are responsible for, because we're not on site with them, right? We're remote, just like a lot of organizations are today. And if you're working from an actual office building, there should be physical security controls in place. I think it's actually important to call out. I think I forget to do this as much as I should. While the customer is responsible for certain things, there is nothing that the customer is responsible for that Artilist doesn't support in some way, shape, or form. Sometimes that's just in the form of policies, writing policies for the customer, and making recommendations. But we support in every single control and assessment objective. Moving on to harden, right? So we're implementing the Tesseract security architecture, which includes maintaining baselines and secure endpoints and secure boundaries, right? Again, this goes back to developing the security architecture, implementing the security architecture, patching the security architecture, and rolling out program updates. And defend really boils down to how do we monitor the environment to ensure alerts are just that alerts are analyzed and acknowledged and trends are identified, in addition to do we detect any anomalies? Do we detect anything that could potentially be a security event, alerting the organization and supporting through any potential incident reporting event? But Defend is a bit more than that. It's also security control monitoring, which is the control in place? Is it turned on? Is it effective? And how do I prove that? And that is, I think, a differentiator for our defense services.
Yeah, and I think it's a kind of like, the idea of getting compliant and staying compliant are two sides of the same coin, but they're oftentimes looked at, from a managed service perspective as different. One's a project of get me to meet all 110 controls, and then staying compliant, it's just that thing that, we have some routine activities we're going to accomplish, but it doesn't account for the number of ways that your business can change over time, or like we talked about in the other types of change, vendors, compliance frameworks, all these different things can happen. And the moment that a business risk analysis isn't done, the moment that devices fall out of a security baseline, compliance is no longer on the table. Now you have more work to do to get there. Staying compliant with Tesseract is the entire goal. We're not just going to get you to a compliant place, say you're meeting all controls, here's the keys, have a good day. It's okay, what's the next benchmark we need to meet? What's the next routine activity we need to conduct? Are all the devices still compliant? Are users still compliant? We're going to continuously check to make sure that we're meeting all those boxes so that there's never a question, is this company compliant? It's they're compliant, what's next? We talked a little bit about the flexibility in the previous question that we talked about, and Tesseract comes with options, and all those options really kind of circle around what kind of compliance do you need? Are you just looking for CMMC level 1? Do you need level 2, and are you prepping for level 3? Your service level dictates how much support from us do you need. Do you have an existing MSP that does a lot of your day-to-day IT support? Maybe a core program is perfect for you. Maybe you need a lot of extra IT support, in which case we could talk about Plus or Premium, where we can provide more support as needed. And then, all the way down to the type of user that you have. Some users need to sit at a physical device that's managed and protected and can process CUI, where some users just need to be able to check their email from the government furnished equipment that they're sitting on a government site. We can adopt all these different user types with a service level and a program level to find you the most cost-effective program that meets all the requirements that you have. And if there's any questions about that, please feel free to ask them. I would love to. Go ahead, Rich.
There is a question on the board. This question is,
Sure.
What reporting features are included to help us demonstrate ongoing compliance to leadership?
Yeah, we have quite a few of those, and I think the two I want to call out specifically. One is our monthly protection reports. It's something that we do on a regular basis as we're continuing to monitor your environment for devices, for users, for different types of potentially malicious activity. We not only are we communicating with you on a regular basis through cases and through regular email communication or status meetings, we're also providing a monthly protection report, which is an assessment objective that has to be met to let you know this is what your environments look like this month. This is the kind of vulnerabilities and the kind of security events that you've had. These are the things that we need to adjust for, and that's a routine activity that we do. We also have customer journey dashboards that kind of help us identify where in the process of getting to meet all those assessment objectives you and your business are. Those are the two that are off the top of my head. Josh, do you have another one?
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that monthly protection report, right? So, you mentioned specifically security monitoring, active in the SIM type reporting criteria, but it's a bit more than that, right? So one of the activities that's done on a routine basis is, so I'm an organization that has 25 assets, managed endpoints in my inventory. maybe the analyst saw that there was actually 36 assets in tune, and even weirder was that there was 39 in Defender for Endpoint. So what the analyst would do is open up a case as they are doing some analysis. That case is then immediately escalated back to the customer, and we're working with the customer to identify, hey, what's the anomaly here? You have an asset inventory that calls out this number of endpoints, these specific endpoints. These are not the same endpoints we're seeing in your endpoint manager, and even different reporting in your endpoint detection and response. So those are things that would also be identified and reported back to the customer for awareness. And I mean, it goes deeper than that, right? There's the same thing could be said for identities, right? So the users, does your authorized user list and your authorized privileged user list and their RBAC roles match what is on the inventory and in the environment? And the list goes on, but we want to ensure that we have full awareness of what's going on with users, user communities, assets, and locations, right? So did somebody decide to remote work is authorized, but if you're handling CUI, that becomes a bit more tricky, right? Depending on your location. Did somebody decide that they were going to go on vacation to France, not report it to the organization, and while they're behind some sort of boundary protection device with an authorized IP, maybe as they were shutting off their boundary protection solution, they were still logged into the environment. Well, the environment noticed, hey, that's impossible travel. Somebody just was in Maryland. Now all of a sudden they're in France. That's impossible travel. What's going on? It would cause us to, one, investigate, two, open a case and raise an alert with the business. So some real world examples of what that report actually looks like and what that evidence looks like.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Josh. We'll talk briefly. I know I want to be cognizant of time, so I'll talk briefly about some of the benefits of a Tesseract program. We've talked a lot about this stuff, the simple to design. We make this easy to build these blocks and build this tailored program. We evolve through these 6 sources of change. It's an ongoing compliance effort, but I think 2 things that I really want to talk about here is an affordability guarantee. We have a price match guarantee that ensures that if you find a better price on a comparable compliance program, we're going to match that. So it's always something to keep in mind. And we have a guarantee to deliver this program. If you fail an assessment, and that's a huge if, we'll help you make changes to your program at no additional cost. We're behind you 100%. And I think that those are really important parts of the Tesseract program that are always great to call out. We'll talk for a second about, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, so along those lines, a question here in the bank on how does Tesseract help businesses manage compliance costs? You kind of touched on a couple, so maybe you can answer that question a little fuller with that.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to our flexible purchase. We have these different program levels, service levels, and user types that kind of help you build a program that's going to be as cost effective to you as possible. We know that compliance programs, these are is an investment for the business. But maybe you don't need everybody to have a laptop and a managed endpoint with a full license, and that could be expensive. Helping to find the right balance, which is what we do in the Tesseract program design of what kind of users we have, what kind of compliance we need, and how much support we need from our managed service provider, aka Tesseract, helps you kind of build that cost-effective program. So you can build something in your budget that is cost-effective, that isn't breaking the bank, and you're getting just exactly what you need, no more or no less.
Yeah, all goes back to have a plan, right? And sometimes having a plan is something as simple as, hey, I know at some point the business is going to need to have all 45 users on a managed endpoint with a full license, and all of the bells and whistles. But maybe today, in order to win contracts, I have these 5 users that always do CUI work in a secure, compliant environment, and I can scale that environment as your MSP, I can scale that environment as your business grows and as the business need for more users to exist in that environment grows. So it's scalable. And I think one of the big call outs there is, one, we want you to have the program that's the right size and features for you in order to be able to win work and continue executing on current contracts. And we're not asking you to change for us ever. We are incorporating a program designed for you, and that is designed to grow and scale as you grow and scale.
Yeah, that's perfect. Let's talk briefly about some next steps. So we've said a lot of great stuff about Tesseract and what Tesseract can provide. If you want to take some next steps, one, we have a great library of resources and some other content, previous talks that we've given. You can see that on our website. You can also see that on YouTube. Our website is artilist.com. You can check out our self-assessment tool, which will help you get a score and upload that to SPRS so you can satisfy that DFARS 252, 204, 70, 19 requirement for a basic assessment. Or you can sign up and with us to go through a free trial of getting that free Tesseract design. We'll walk through that initial business risk analysis, enclave scope design, CUI flow design, so we can really understand what you and your business requires in a CMMC program and provide you some solutions on how we can help you meet those programs. And with that, I would like to stop and give opportunity for any other additional questions if we have time for it, Rich. I think do we have a couple of minutes?
I think we're close to time, but I think we can get one question in, and then
Sure.
we're going to have to take the rest of these questions and get to them after this webinar is over. We'll go directly to those individuals and answer the questions. So without that, I'll jump right into it. The question is, what resources or support does Tesseract offer if we encounter a cybersecurity incident?
Ooh, that's a fun one. Josh, you want to take that?
Sure. So one, we, as part of your program, we built out a incident response plan. And in that incident response plan, there is also an incident response tabletop exercise. That incident response tabletop exercise is designed to exercise the plan. And it really is a good training environment for all of the key stakeholders that would be involved in an incident. And it goes into every aspect to include here is how you would report, and here are the organizations that you would report to. However, we always recommend that you consult a legal advisor or your lawyers if you have some on staff prior to reporting. And we, as your MSP, are there to assist in investigations and any remediations. Prior to that, we do upon initial identification of anomalies or events that could be categorized as incidents, we will take initial triage actions as we're reporting the event to you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Josh.
Excellent. All right. So I guess with that, that concludes our session today. If we did not get to your question, an Artilist representative will reach out to you to answer that question directly. We will be sending follow-up emails. In the email, you'll receive a recording of the webinar, as well as other resources to help you with topics that we covered earlier today. And then if you have additional questions that you weren't able to get into the question response time, go ahead and send that in to marketing@artilist.com. We'll be happy to assist you with those. And if you're looking for more information or additional information about Artilist and our services, please visit us at www.artilist.com. And thank you for joining today. We look forward to you joining us again with the Artilist webinar series.